Okay. So, good evening, my fellow United States citizens. So, it looks like I'm laying down on the job. Why not? It seems like that's what our leaders are doing. So, what it amounts to is pen and paper. And on this seventh day of March, the topic for today is the fiscal cliff. So, what do we know about the fiscal cliff? Probably not as much as you. But from a novice point of view, I will share some research information to the best of my understanding. So, the physical cliff, some scholars and news reporters refer to it as a poison pill. They refer to it as a poison pill because they seem to think that it is a time that politicians do nothing to work together to reduce America's debt deficit. I would agree. I would further state that it is a time when politicians get on opposite ends of our throats and see how tight they can pull. So, really, what is the fiscal cliff? It is about cutting taxes that will affect the wealthy or the less fortunate. It affects everyone, those who have an income and those who do not. They call it a balancing the budget deficit. I call it a balancing of power for those who we voted in office. So, when was it created? It was created, the first mentioning of the term fiscal cliff was mentioned in 1966 in a Film Daily article discussing where McKenna's goal would be filmed. But it had nothing to do with the fiscal cliff. The second time we've heard about it was in 1967, when it was actually mentioned by Richard Spong, a writer for editorial research reports, where he actually mentioned the fiscal cliff hanger on June 26, 1967. Both of those you can find information on at BuzzFeed.com. Now, moving forward, in 2011, August of 2011, Congress passed the Budget Control Act. This temporarily raised the nation's debt limit by $2.1 trillion. The legislation mandated that the Congress reach a more long-term solution. If not, then the law calls for that collection of tax increase and spending cuts to start after running through the $2.1 trillion. So, affecting many governments, organizations by $1 trillion and ordering the super committee to find another $1 trillion to cut. What does that mean? It means if you are wealthy, you will pay more taxes, and if you're not, and depending on government resources like Medicare, Medicaid, family services, child services, Social Security, education, or military to protect us, you might be on your own. What did Congress do on January 1st, 2013 to address the fiscal cliff? Well, 3 hours shy of the midnight deadline, the White House and congressional leaders reached a deal to avert the so-called fiscal cliff. Under the deal, Vice President Joe Biden and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Congress would permanently extend the Bush income tax cut at $400,000. So it would also temporarily delay the sequester by billions of dollars in and across the board spending cuts for another 2 months. The deal included other tax provisions as well. It extended the child tax credit and the college tuition credits for 5 years, individual and business tax extended for 2 years, and the Medicare doc fixed for 1 year. The alternate minimum tax will be permanently fixed. The agreement was also extends the Farm Bill for 1 year. A few hours later, the Senate passed the bill. The deal now goes to the House, which will be back in session tomorrow afternoon. We cannot continue to spend more than 35% of funds coming from borrowed money. What do I mean? I mean that with the country's debt to GDP ratio at 70%, which is the highest it has been in 70 years, affecting the country's economic growth. So what's the rush? The rush is, unfortunately, revenue is an important part of the algebra of getting our house in order. Again, we should not do anything to convulsive to our economy, and we need to try and figure out how to fix it. So, meanwhile, the deal contains a major giveaway to Wall Street, which won a 20% rate on dividends above $400,000, a rate that otherwise would have risen to the Clinton era rate of 39.6. So it sounds like it's a tug of war, and it is. So what physical cliff issues did Congress omit to address on January 1st, 2013? In the early hours of the new year, the Senate overwhelmingly voted to extend the Bush-era tax cut for most Americans. With higher income taxpayer facing a rate increase, the Senate measure was later approved by the House, and President Obama signed it into law the following day. And then for most taxpayers, income tax rate will remain unchanged at the 2001-2003 levels. Not only that, the tax range on large inheritance would also change from 35% to 40%. But anyway, the thing is that I'm trying to get you to understand that many of us will be affected by this fiscal cliff. But due to time, we cannot tell it all. Just like them, some things you'll just have to fill in the blanks. But I do want to remind you, watch your paychecks, because you will be taking home less money. But remember, Wall Street will be getting major giveaways. So for now, that is all that we have to say. Please stay tuned for the next episode. Have a good day.
Now what? It stopped?
Yep.